He charged me with resisting arrest.
Get that confidence in jail.
I object.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Allegedly Bravo. I'm Cash.
And I'm Lauren.
Hello, you guys.
I think. I don't know anymore.
I don't even know where to start. Today we are doing an episode of our debriefing where we talk about just general legal issues that are happening around the world, non-Bravo related. And, things have been off to a rocky start.
I mean, to say the least. Like, you guys, what we usually do is record on Zoom and record each other's, like, I record my voice memo and she records hers and whatever. Okay, Zoom was, like, not working. Nothing was working. We've tried everything. And I feel like we MacGyvered it pretty well, though.
Yeah, it was, it's got to be something with Zoom. There's something going on because our microphones have decided not to work. So
I just hope they can hear us. Like, I hope this is working.
And it's probably not. So
right now, Cash and I are actually on a phone call and we're talking to each other through our AirPods, but recording our voices on the voice memo. So we could just be talking into thin air. Who knows?
Oh, gosh. God willing, this works.
Yeah. Okay, well, if you can hear us, I want to give a little shout out to our VIP patrons, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, so we have CK. Thank you so much. Classic Sky Tops. Go give her a follow on Instagram. Wendy Beth. Thank you so much. And Mr. or Mrs. Smith. It was a non, so I'm not sure if it's a Mr. or a Miss, but there you go. So go ahead and if you want to shout out, hit us up on Patreon. That's the $20 VIP level. We also have an ad-free version of our episodes for $3 a month. We have a newsletter for $1 a month, and $5 a month will get you bonus content.
It's well worth it.
I think so.
Worth it.
Yeah.
And this week, we are dropping another episode of Salt Lake since we had 1 week off.
Yeah, that was kind of hard to deal with.
It was hard to deal with, but we had the holiday and then they also dropped Orange County. So,
oh my God.
I haven't watched it yet.
Oh my gosh. You haven't oh, well, you were traveling, unfortunately, for work. So that's okay. You're forgiven.
How was it, though?
It was pretty good. I'm cautiously very optimistic.
Okay, I'm excited. Well, maybe
I'll
give an update then.
Heather still bugs the living fucking shit out of me.
I can't stand her.
Oh my God. And you know what? She wears a lot of color all of a sudden. And I'm like, she's a black and white kind of gal. Like, she was wearing orange. And it was like a tennis outfit. And I was like, I don't know. It made me uncomfortable.
I just feel like all of this attention's going to go to her head.
Oh my God. Cash.
Her already big head.
You need to watch it. And then, oh my God.
I'll do a little recap then. We'll do a little recap on Sunday with the
Salt Lake City.
The Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
The Salt Lake City gals.
Okay, but right now we're doing the briefing room.
And you guys, what a week. What a week, what a couple weeks. It's been chaotic in the legal world.
I feel like there's no stable ground. Like, what is real anymore? What's even going on?
What's not going on? That's a
better question. What's not going on?
We've got the Duggars. We've got Theranos updates. We have the school shooting update. We have the potential Roe vs. Wade overturning.
Oh my gosh.
The Rush shooting. The music legend, Clarence Avant's wife. Jussie Smollett update.
Oh my God.
It's just, and so many more.
And so much more. So let's just issue a blanket trigger warning. We're going to talk about some heinous shit today. So I'm fine if you guys want to turn it off because, the Duggar thing's kind of gross. Like, there's CP involved, and that's, like, the most heinous thing I've ever heard of. So, you know, if you're not into hearing about the legal updates and some of these things, we'll see you next week when we talk about Mohamed Hadid. But if you're going to stick around, trigger warning for the whole episode.
Trigger. Yes. It's just somewhat of a depressing episode, but also very interesting because
this is why I don't watch the news.
There's a lot of complex stuff going on. And I think sometimes we don't have enough time to read the news. Mm-hmm. And so it's nice to get a little debriefing by your two favorite gals.
Yeah, your two absolute favorite gals. Well, do you want to start or what?
Sure. Okay. So one of the biggest news stories that broke this week was Mr. Alec Baldwin, who sat down with George Stephanopoulos for a little one-on-one interview about the Rush shooting.
I'm sorry, but before we move on, and I know that we need to really hold some space for this, wasn't George Stephanopoulos the guy who got pink eye at the Olympics?
What do you mean, the guy at the Olympics?
Like, a couple years ago, I think it was like the Beijing Olympics, like, he got massive, like, gross pink eye, and it was, like, the whole time, every like, recap, you know, when they interview the medal winners, like, his eye was just, like, oozing. It was disgusting.
Oh, no.
I think that was him.
Well, you better fact check yourself.
I better. Yeah, I guess you're right. Before I besmirch this poor man.
He always reminds me of the Friends episode where the ladies talk about George Stephanopoulos, because I think he was one of Bill Clinton's advisors or his chief of staff. Something involved with his presidency. But anyway, so Alec Baldwin sits down with George Stephanopoulos to do a one-on-one about the Rush shooting, to tell kind of his side of the story, which I think took a lot of people off, caught a lot of people off guard. Yeah, important that you fact check that.
Yeah. Sorry, George.
And so he sits down with George Stephanopoulos to talk about the Rush shooting. I was surprised that he did this since there is a pending criminal investigation and the DAs haven't made a determination as to whether or not they're going to bring manslaughter charges and who they're going to charge. But Alec, did you watch the interview, by the way?
So I obviously saw clips on TikTok because it's me. So I've seen bits and pieces and I have a lot of thoughts on the parts that I've seen, but not the whole thing. Okay. So I could be speaking out of turn. Who knows?
Okay, so I watched it, and so the biggest claim, and I think the biggest shocker, is that he claims that he did not pull the trigger. And I think that has a lot of people questioning then what the hell happened, but there was another person, I guess, that had also confirmed that he was an eyewitness and said that Alec Baldwin, in fact, did not pull the trigger. And Baldwin recounts the story by saying that he pulled the hammer of the gun, which caused the gun to then fire. And according to one of our gun experts that we met with, he said that it is possible to pull the hammer of the gun back, but you're not pulling it back all the way. And sometimes it can release and trigger the firing pin, which is most likely what happened.
Oh, okay. So whenever he so it's like in the movies when they like hold the top and pull it back, like cock it.
Uh-huh.
Is that what that is? Oh my gosh.
And so I guess sometimes it can happen where it hits the firing pin and it triggers it. And so that's likely what happened. But George Stephanopoulos was asking a lot of the questions a lot of people have, and members of the general public have, is like, why were you pointing the gun at her? Why didn't you look at the gun before you shot it? Like, because I don't know if you've seen, but George Clooney has come out and said, look, every single time an armorer or a prop person comes up and gives you a gun, they show it to you, then you open it back up and look to make sure there's no bullets in it. And you show it basically to everybody on set so it confirms that it's empty.
Yeah.
You don't just simply take somebody's word for it. And when George Stephanopoulos said that to Alec Baldwin's response was hilarious. He was like, there's a lot of people who are really inserting themselves in this who shouldn't be. And it just made me laugh. Because I was like, no, Alec, it's other people who are part of the industry who are telling you that you made a mistake. And
and that the whole thing was a big mistake, like over and over and over again.
Yes. And so I didn't know this, but this was kind of more of like an independent, they described it as almost a low budget film.
Oh, uh-huh.
I thought this was like a huge production.
I think because
You know, like
Alec Baldwin was in it, we like feel like it's some big deal. But you know, they always have those like indie movies that have like randomly like Jennifer Lawrence in them or something, you know, that are like the biggest like names for like
yes, and so
Lisa Barlow
he was
Festival.
I think it's just perfect because he was the producer and the star of the film, which is like a very Alec Baldwin, I feel like, thing to do.
Oh yeah.
And so, but he was recounting what happened, and he said that the victim in the case is the one that told him to point the gun at the camera and fire. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I took the direction of the cinematographer. And so that's what I did. And then George Stephanopoulos said, well, you're always supposed to, like everybody says, you never point a gun at somebody on set. And he's like, but that's how we were getting the shot. Like the cinematographer told me to do that. So I do feel like there's a lot of like shifting of blame here.
Well, okay. So my question is, did anyone else corroborate that? Because it's pretty easy to be like, oh, the dead person is the one who told me to do it. And they can't stand here and say that they never said that.
That's a good question. I don't know. I haven't heard any other statements. Obviously, we're getting a very pointed one, you know, a one side of the story. Yeah, but hugely. There was a point where he started to cry, and I don't think there were actual tears. And then I do, if he is crying, I think he's crying for himself. I don't think he's crying for the victim in this case, but that's just based on my own observations of the interview.
Crocodile tears?
Very crocodile tears. Very like Candace from Housewives.
Huh.
Yeah, so we'll TBD on what's going to happen with Mr. Baldwin, but I'm interested to see if the DA is going to bring criminal charges, and it will be interesting also to see how the civil suit unfolds. What are your thoughts on this?
Okay, so based on what I saw on the talk, the TikTok, not the talk show. It was like mainly an one person sort of vibe that I got. Like he was like, only one person is responsible for this. Only one person can be held accountable. It was only one person's fault. And it's like, okay, so obviously like you're pointing blame directly at one person, you know, and kind of like building the narrative that like no one else should be charged because it's just the job of one person, which I guess would be the armor. So I don't know. I feel like he was just kind of really working hard to like say it couldn't have been him.
Yeah, and I agree too. He was trying to point the finger and put the responsibility on someone else, but I think that would have been fine if it probably would have been a reasonable argument if he was just an actor, but he was a producer on the film and like he was meeting with the directors, and I feel like there's some level of responsibility and accountability that falls on his shoulders.
I agree.
But
1,000,000%.
But this is all very new because obviously deaths like this don't happen very often on set. So it will be interesting to see how things unfold.
Yeah, it will be. It's really
okay.
sad.
What do you got?
Okay, so let's go right into something even worse. Josh Duggar's CP trial began this week. So for all of you who don't know, Josh Duggar is one of the oldest children from that show 19 Kids and Counting, all about like the Duggar people who like aren't sister wives but like have enough kids to be sister wives, you know, and like I don't know, I'm not gonna talk shit, but like, you know, they're weird. Okay, I mean it's TLC. So anyway, he is charged with 2 counts of downloading and possessing CP, and he pled not guilty. Well, now he's facing trial, and he's sitting for trial. He's facing up to 20 years in prison. So the interesting things that I've learned about this so far, because, you know, the trial just started this week, and so far they've called like a computer expert who discussed how these bad images were found. And also, the judge allowed prior evidence of Josh's prior CM charges.
Yes.
And evidence of, like, that history, which is, I find very interesting because generally prior bad acts aren't admissible, like, in situations where they're on trial for the same thing, you know?
But they are two different things. And so I think in this case, I think it goes to his motive, obviously, and his intent. And so they're showing this pattern of behavior, that this was not an isolated incident, that this was, in fact, really his character and an unfortunate disease that he suffers from.
Yeah.
And he's going bye-bye.
Yeah.
Because they're just I guarantee the software expert or the computer expert that got on linked all of his IP addresses, and it's kind of like the boring phase of the trial, but it's one of the most important.
So I thought it was actually really interesting what this computer expert said, and how the expert said how the images were actually found. So the images were found on Duggar's computer at work, and he owns like a used car dealership or something, like, or a regular car dealership, I don't know, but he sells cars. And he, like, had on his computer 2 different operating systems, Windows and the Linux operating system. And they found it on the Linux operating system. And how the FBI finds people who have these photos is they take the photo and they do what's called hashing, which, like, does this mathematical mapping of what these images look like and what generally these images all share in common and contain. And so they can track or see who has these images by looking at the mathematical equations, like, and it will trigger that, like, oh, this is not a good image, you know? Yeah. So that happened, and they found it on his computer. Well, the defense is kind of being like, okay, well, it was on his computer at work, like, it could have been anybody.
Yes.
But the thing is, the computer expert was, like, testifying about the passwords and the logins and stuff. And I guess the passwords were, like, the same passwords that Duggar had used for, like, his bank and his Instagram and his, you know, like, other things that, like, not freaks have, you know?
Yes. It's going to be a very difficult case to try to defend. And I'm sure that Mr. Duggar is coming to terms with the fact that he is going to prison for a while. Yeah.
So, okay, so I have a question for you, because this is something that, like, it doesn't sit right with me. So if his wife, like, knows that he has this tendency and, like, does things like this and has these bad images and continues to have him in the home, can she be in trouble for endangering her children?
I don't know. I think there would have to be some type of... I don't know if just simply possessing that is enough to trigger a child endangerment charge. But I would need more, I guess. I don't know. It's possible.
Yeah.
You know, she was well aware of it. I don't really know much about the background on this.
Yeah.
In terms of what the wife knew. And I'm assuming the wife's not going to testify at trial and she's going to claim some type of spousal immunity.
Right. And she's been sitting in the galley watching. So, yeah, she's not testifying.
Is his sister going to testify against him as a character witness for the defense or for the prosecution?
It's still up in the air because some of the sisters haven't been in the courtroom. but neither side has provided witness lists.
They haven't made the witness list public, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't be... Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised because, I mean, if the prosecution issues a subpoena, they have to comply.
Right.
So, well, this will... I wonder how long the trial is going to last. And, I mean, hopefully justice for the children and justice
Gosh.
Yeah, justice for the children for sure.
Exactly.
He needs to go. Unfortunately, there isn't... I don't really think there's any rehabilitative programs that are effective for people that suffer from this. And I'm not trying to in any way, I'm not trying to sympathize with him in any way, but it's, it is sad because I think it's a wiring issue, I think, in people's heads. And I don't think there's any way to rehabilitate someone that suffers from this.
Your brain is fried.
Yeah. And so I think in situations like this, the best thing that can happen is incarceration.
Oh, yeah. And probably castration too.
Well, incarceration, they won't be around anybody that's their type, so.
That's my type. Yeah, you're right.
Okay, let's move on to something a little bit more fun.
Okay.
A little less dark. The Jussie Smollett of it all.
Let's move on to something less dramatic.
You guys, I forgot how insane this story was. So, and I forgot that it happened 3 years ago. Doesn't it feel like it just happened?
Yeah, because it's one of those things that just sticks with you.
So currently the actor is is in the middle of a trial. I think it began last week. And so he's facing 3 years.
That's it?
Up to 3 years in prison.
Has he been in prison this whole time? Do we know?
No. He's been out on his own. So the prosecutors have charged Mr. Smollett with a class 4 felony that carries a sentence of up to 3 years. So the prosecutors charged Smollett with a felony disorderly conduct after law enforcement and prosecutors said he lied to the police about what happened on the January 29th, 2019 attack. So according to Smollett, the original story was that he was walking home from the subway at 2 a.m. when two men that recognized him from his show began hurling racial slurs and homophobic slurs at him. He then said the men struck him, looped a makeshift noose around his neck, and shouted, "This is MAGA country."
Oh my God.
And so do you remember all of the hype around this story? The people that were coming out and the celebrities that were tweeting, this is horrific. Oh my God,
yeah. I mean, it was the most disturbing thing that had happened. Yeah, it was sick.
Did you ever see the body cam that came out of this case?
No.
Okay, so there is body cam that was eventually released where the officers are actually in Jussie Smollett's apartment and he still has the noose around his neck.
Oh.
And what do you feel? Isn't that odd?
Gosh, sitting here with a good mental clarity at the moment, I feel yeah, that's odd. However, I also have that thing in me that's you don't know how you would act in trauma.
Exactly.
But then it was allegedly false, right? So it's a weird way to feel, but I would think that I would have removed it. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So just a few weeks after the incident, prosecutors announced that Smollett was being charged with staging the attack as an attempt to further his career and secure a higher salary on the show Empire. And according to police, Smollett hired two brothers from Nigeria to pretend to attack him, and Smollett would pay the brothers $3,500. And so, according to these brothers...
Sorry.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So $7,000 total.
I would think each, right?
I mean,
that's me
it
kind of
better
speculating.
because that's not a lot of money.
So, according to the brothers, they were interviewed, and I think there was an issue of the payment or something, and that's why they ended up coming out. And then they were interviewed by police, and the brothers told the police that Smollett reached out to them and asked them to fake this attack, and that he drove them to where the attack was going to happen to do somewhat of like a dress rehearsal.
Oh my God.
And he told the brothers, hey, look, there's a camera here, there's a camera there. This is where you're going to run away. This is how it's going to happen. So it was totally plotted and planned. And so based on these statements, the prosecutors brought the charges, and then he had his first court appearance, and the judge who was arraigning him, who was also African American, said, this is one of the most vile and despicable, the most vile and despicable part of it all is the noose that has been a symbol that conjures up so much evil in this country's history. And I guess the judge who arraigned him was just absolutely appalled by this, which rightfully so.
Okay, rightfully so. And I have a question. Shouldn't the judge be impartial at the arraignment, or no? Or what? I don't know. I've never been to an arraignment.
No, not at an arraignment, because at that point they're weighing whether or not this person's a risk to public safety, whether bail should be set, whether they should be able to be released on their own recognizance. And so
do they look at it like as if they were guilty? Like, hey, if this is true, they shouldn't be allowed out, or what?
So they look at a lot of factors, and in this case, since it's really it's a disorderly conduct and a potential, I think that's the only claim he had, the only charge that he had, but there isn't really, he's not a threat to public safety in any way. So I think the judge was just lecturing him from the bench and saying, look, this is the allegations that are in front of that you're being charged with are reprehensible, and you should be ashamed of yourself. Yeah. Because, a noose carries a significant significant to this country's history, and it's not something that should be used, obviously,
in any way that would, utilize something like that. It's horrible.
So, yeah, TBD on what's going to happen, and I've heard rumblings in the news that he will be testifying, and I think that he has to testify because there really is no defense in this case at this point. The prosecution's case is very, very, very strong. And so I'm assuming he's going to testify, and it's going to be interesting to see what his theory is for the defense.
Yeah. What do you say? Like, it wasn't disorderly? I don't know. It was very orderly because I planned it.
No. I think he's going to they're going to try to smear the witnesses, being the two brothers, and they're going to try to paint them as liars and motivated by money, and probably motivated by fame in some way. And so they'll try to sway the jury that way, but I don't think it's going to be a very strong defense. And then also, I don't think that if he is found guilty, there's no way he's going to go to jail for this. I think that they'll probably just put him on probation and make him do some community service, probably make him make a public apology, and maybe pay restitution to the police department in some way for having to, investigate and exhaust resources in trying to investigate this alleged hate crime. So, yeah.
Why do you think that? Is it usually not a thing people go to jail for?
Well, you have to think. I mean, I'm assuming he doesn't really have a criminal history. I don't know what his rap sheet is, but, he's a person who
I feel like we would have heard about it. We would have heard about it by now if he had one.
Yeah, and yes, this isn't a crime. This is a victimless crime. And unfortunately, I think it goes more to his psychology and his mental state. Mm-hmm. And so why are we going to punish somebody and put them in county jail or prison when I think the best method of rehabilitation in this instance is to make him pay money back, reimburse the police department for the money that they spent investigating it, recoup the taxpayer dollars that were wasted, make him do some community service, and probably make him go to therapy or counseling. That's the best way, I think, in this case to hold him accountable for his conduct.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I agree with you. That sounds way better.
Yeah, I don't think jail is appropriate in that case.
It would just really be even wasting even more funds.
Yeah, and I think the public shame that he is going to feel if he is found guilty is going to be
even
brutal.
Worse than anything.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I haven't ever been to jail, but I can assume it's bad.
Yeah, but I don't think he's been hired in the last 3 years to participate in any types of film, music, nothing. And he was at like the peak of his career. Yeah. And so it will be, if he's found guilty, I'm assuming he's not going to get a lot of phone calls about new roles or Broadway roles,
Yeah.
So, but we'll see. I can't wait to see how it unfolds. We'll post it on our Instagram story when the verdict comes out.
Ooh, okay. How long do we think this one will be?
I think this will be short. I think he'll take the stand probably next week, and then I don't think the jury will deliberate long in this case.
Right.
Because there's not a lot of evidence.
Right. So probably next week we'll know what happened.
Yeah.
Well, good thing this comes out on Monday. It'll still be relevant.
Yeah. And so really quickly, I pulled up another article that says that Jussie Smollett's defense in this case is that he was the real victim of a real crime, according to his attorney. So their theory is that the two brothers attacked Smollett because they didn't like him, and that a $3,500 check that had been paid to the men was for training so that he could prepare for an upcoming music video. It was not a payment for staging a hate crime, as the prosecutors would have alleged. And they also suggest a third attacker was involved and told the jurors there is not a shred of physical or forensic evidence linking Smollett to the crime prosecutors allege. And so that he is, in fact, the real victim.
Wow.
Uh-huh. And according to the police department, the Chicago PD spent 3,000 staff hours on the investigation.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Why did they spend so much time if there's not that much evidence?
Well, that was the whole thing, is that it was this crazy story that was an alleged hate crime.
Yeah.
And so the police department was doing they were doing everything they could to figure out, who was going around Chicago making these homophobic racial slurs. And so I think a lot of that time was spent in the early days of the investigation. Yeah.
Wow. Wouldn't it just be something if he was not guilty of this for real? Yeah. It would be, oh gosh, now I have such a pit.
It's just,
I'll never know.
But you're telling me that he just happened to pay these brothers $3,500 related to a training for an upcoming role, and then those two brothers are the ones that attacked him?
I don't know. I don't know. It makes me so uncomfortable. You know what I mean?
It's just...
Because it's so bad. You cannot even... I can't imagine someone making that up. It's so bad. No one would make that up.
It's just diabolical.
It kind of reminds me of people who say that Kim Kardashian made up her attack. It's no one would make that up. That's horrible. But then it's why do we all think he did make it up? Why do we think he made it up? Do we know?
I think there's enough circumstantial evidence for the prosecutors to believe that there was, enough evidence to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt.
Well, of course,
but
yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised, though, if this jury verdict hangs, meaning that they can't reach a unanimous decision, or if they acquit him because they don't think that finding him guilty is appropriate given kind of the...
up in the airness.
Not the up in the airness, but it's just not, in probably a lot of people's minds, they may not think that it's that serious. And so, it's easier to find somebody not guilty than it is to find them guilty and potentially ruin their lives,
Yeah.
I think that's something a lot of jurors struggle with when they're in deliberation.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, TBD on what's going to happen.
Ugh. It's so much. It just keeps me up at night.
Okay, so what's up next?
Okay, so up next is a Theranos update. Because that was in trial this week. It continued. Her criminal fraud trial against Elizabeth Holmes continued, and she testified to a lot of information that was pretty damning to herself, including the fact that she doctored reports and made edits to certain reports, like for the purpose of and intending to like trick Walgreens into using the Theranos blood testing device. Because I don't know if you guys remember, she swore that you just needed like barely a finger prick of blood, just a little droplet, and her little machine could test for so many things because it was so good at testing. But it's impossible. Like, you couldn't do it. And it was a big fraud. That's what's going on. So she tricked Walgreens into like investing in it, putting it in their store, etc. Oh, and so the person who owned 49% of Theranos is her old 10-year romantic partner. His name, he goes by Sonny. So Elizabeth is like kind of accusing him of like emotionally and sexually abusing her.
Why are you whispering?
I don't know, because S-A-N-E-A, her.
Okay.
I don't know why that's relevant.
She's probably just trying to convince the jury that she was not the one that was at the front of making it. It was not her acting alone and making these decisions, and the decisions she was making were probably persuaded. She was persuaded by the ex-boyfriend, and the reasons why she was doing them was probably because she's alleging that she was under duress, and she probably wasn't there all mentally because she was being sexually and physically and emotionally abused by this man. But I don't think that's a strong enough defense to find her not liable in this situation, because I think the amount of evidence that they have is pretty strong.
Yeah.
And she's the one who initially, and we can't forget, she's the one who initially came up with this insane idea that this machine would be able to test like a droplet of blood and be able to diagnose cancers and genetic diseases. And
like she was the mastermind.
Yeah, she was the mastermind behind it. So I think the jury is going to see right through that, because she was motivated. I think she was 100% motivated by money, fame. She wanted to be the next Steve Jobs.
Right.
And I think that she got into this toxic relationship, and he was probably helping
oh my
fuel
God.
her
Their
her
text
ego.
messages are so weird.
Oh my God, did you see the one where it was like, you're the moon, you're my star,
you're my
love, and then his response was, okay.
Oh yeah, oh my God. No, they're all like that. Like, she was like, I'm so sorry that I needed you emotionally today. I can be strong, I promise. And he's like, no need, I can be strong for both of us. I'm like, ew, what are we in middle school? Like, I want to just crawl in a hole and bury myself. Ugh.
See, and I don't know if it was a real relationship. Like, I wonder if he was in the relationship purely for the fame and the attention that was going to come with the success of his product.
I think they were just like
weird,
horny for like success together, you know, like they both fed off the toxic energy, like, you know, weirdly.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know these people, but I don't get a good vibe, you know? So I'm going to post the text messages. I'm going to post them.
Yes. Could you imagine if we get a guilty verdict on Jussie Smollett, a guilty verdict on this case, the Theranos case, a guilty on the Duggar case? It would be wild.
It would be amazing. You know, these people
What a
deserve
week in
it.
justice.
Yeah. I hope that's what we can record for our next briefing room. Because, you know, they're kind of sad. What else? Oh, and one more thing that is being reported, which I thought was hysterical, was that a lot of Holmes's past sorority sisters have been supporting her.
What?
Yeah, and coming to the trial and like sitting in the galley.
Wait, her sorority sister? She doesn't strike me as one that would have been a sorority gal.
I know, me neither. And especially not one that like continued friendships. I don't know, like she's just odd to me. I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, I definitely think that she's going to be found liable for sure. Because the amount of workers that have come out and who are testifying against her as to the working conditions, the research, the amount of times they put her on notice of the defunct research and how it wasn't a product that they should have been putting out there.
Yeah.
So much. I think the evidence is overwhelming.
Yeah. I mean, come on. There's entire documentaries about it. And she knew. I mean, she knew.
Yeah, she was aware. She was put on notice. So, remember the preponderance of the evidence.
Yeah.
It's a lower
No,
standard.
This is criminal.
Oh, she's being prosecuted criminally?
Yeah, this is a criminal fraud trial.
Oh, I thought this was a civil trial.
No.
Shut up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I forgot to write the prison sentence. I think she faces...
Oh my God. I thought this was a civil trial. No. I thought this was like Walgreens suing.
No, this is a criminal fraud trial. I know.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. That's bad. She's going to jail.
No, she's going to prison.
Prison.
Oh.
Did you learn that in prison?
Wow, that just got a lot juicier.
Yeah, I know, right? It hits different when you realize it's criminal.
Oh,
okay,
I'm fascinated.
So what do you have?
Okay. So next up, I have so many depressing stories, and I'm so sorry. So really quickly, I'm not going to go in a lot of detail about this because it is upsetting. The author, have you ever read Lovely Bones?
Yes.
Or did you ever see the movie? Okay, so the author of Lovely Bones, her name is Alice Seabold. Mm-hmm. So she had written a book, a memoir called Lucky, which was a recount of a sexual assault that she was a victim to when she was in college back in the 80s. And so there was a man that was then eventually prosecuted and sentenced as a result of this crime back in 1981. And his name is Anthony Broadwater. And so he was convicted in 1982 of this alleged crime and sentenced to 16 years in prison. He was then eventually released in the 90s and, lived in squander with his wife because he was not able to get a job and, came out of the prison system. And he didn't want to start a family because he didn't want to have kids, because he didn't want his kids to live with the stigma of, being the product or the child of an accused rapist. And
while maintaining his innocence the entire time.
All while maintaining his innocence, yes, was very adamant that he was not a part of this. And I should include that Broadwater was like an upstanding member of this community. He was he was in the military and served in the war, I believe. And so what happened was, and where everything went wrong, is when, after the crime had occurred, Seabold was walking down the street and swore that when she was walking down the street, she came across a person that engaged in this criminal behavior. And so she says that this guy walks up to her and says, "Hey," I think that Broadwater walks up to her and says, "Hey, I think that I know you from somewhere." And so she says in her memoir, I saw it in his eyes. Like I could tell, like, this is the man that was on top of me, or this is the man that was with me that night. Wow. So she goes to the police, makes the report, and the police officers then say, okay, they go and they comb the area. They can't find anyone. And the police say, okay, I think it's this guy. I think it's this Broadwater guy. So they bring him in and they do what is called a 6-pack, which is a lineup of 6 different men. And they bring in Seabold to identify.
With the one-way mirror thing where they line them up and
yeah. So this is where things get odd. She then misidentifies Broadwater. She identifies somebody else. And she said that I could tell by the look in his eyes that this was the man, right? But somehow, I don't know the facts. I can't find anything about how the police department or how the prosecution then came to the decision to prosecute Broadwater, but they did. And so they tried and convicted him. And Seabold actually testified during the trial and identified Broadwater as the suspect. And so there was also another expert witness that had testified about some type of microscopic hair analysis that was linked to the assault. And he was convicted to the 16 years in prison.
What's microscopic hair analysis? Like they found his skin or what?
They found a pubic hair.
Oh, and then they DNA tested it?
I don't think they DNA tested it. I think they just did a side-by-side analysis or something. But fast forward to today.
All pubes really quickly, look alike.
Exactly. And so fast forward to today, the Justice Department has since debunked this microscopic analysis as junk science. And so Mr. Broadwater's conviction was eventually overturned, and he was exonerated a couple weeks ago.
Oh.
And so really quickly, Netflix was creating Lucky. It was turning Lucky into a series for Netflix, and there was somebody that was on there that was going to be was a producer, but then was eventually fired because there were some disagreements about stuff and how the projection of the film. And this producer said that he saw inconsistencies in the memoir and what was being written in terms of the script. And so he then went on to investigate and look at these inconsistencies.
Sorry, was she writing the script too, or was somebody else writing the script?
I'm sure she was a part of it, but I think somebody else was writing it. But they were using the memoir, and they were also cross-referencing the investigative file, and the and the trial transcripts and everything. And so he sees these inconsistencies because in the book, Seabold uses a pseudonym for Mr. Broadwater. She uses a different name. Which is interesting. But so anyways, thankfully, Mr. Broadwater.
Especially because sorry to interrupt you, but at that point that she wrote Lucky, he had already been in jail.
Convicted. Yes.
So what would have been the point in using a fake name?
Exactly. And so, now Seabold has come out and issued a statement and said, "I'm grateful that Mr. Broadwater has finally been vindicated. But the fact remains that 40 years ago, he became another young black man brutalized in our flawed legal system, and I will forever be sorry for what was done to him." And she says that she struggled with the role she unwittingly played within a system that sent an innocent man to jail, and that she was only a traumatized 18-year-old, and she put her faith into the legal system. And I have some issues with this.
Yeah, I do too. So she has no responsibility to take here?
Exactly. And that is a problem that I have in it is, and I don't know if she may have issued another statement where she has expressed personal accountability, but it's like, let's not forget that you were the one who, yes, there was somebody was misidentified and the prosecution and the police officers are responsible, but you are the one who brought this to the police officer's attention, and you also misidentified somebody, and then you testified in court that that was the person that you saw. And so, and then on top of that, you went to write a book that then you profited off of and made millions of dollars off of and have had this successful career.
And was going to literally be on Netflix with this
and
man in prison or in jail.
And it's like you had an opportunity because she wrote the book after, I think, a couple years after the incident or later on into her adult life. And it's like you could have had this like reckoning in your brain where you're like, wait, I need to tell the truth, and I need to tell the world that this man who I thought did it, there was an issue with identification throughout the trial. It's like,
did she not know that it was wrong? Like, was she?
She had to have known it was a different person.
Yeah.
Because you're pointing out one person in a 6-pack lineup, and then in court you're seeing a different person. And so
that's crazy. You know, I read that book. It was pretty good, but
that's what I've heard. I've heard it's a really, really good book, but I think that he should
that just makes my stomach hurt. I hate that.
I know. And so I think Mr. Broadwater, I'm grateful that he has been out of prison, but I think that he should sue the police department, the city, the county, and I think he should sue Miss Seabold.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
And that is just my opinion. That is not legal advice in any way, but I think that's probably what is likely going to happen here.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to something horrible. So unfortunately, this week there was another school shooting. Horrible.
This one's crazy.
This is very interesting to me for a lot of reasons. But so the Oxford High School mass murderer's parents were wanted and charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. So after the shooting occurred, the murderer was charged, or do I say alleged murderer? Do I have to say alleged?
In this case,
it's pretty obvious.
In this case, I don't think it's alleged. And let's just say I think the death penalty exists for a reason for people like this.
Okay, so the murderer was charged as an adult with 24 crimes, including murder, attempted murder, and terrorism. So what happened was, why the parents are involved is because this murderer's father purchased the weapon that was used in the shooting at a Black Friday sale as a Christmas present for this kid who's 15 years old and not able to buy his own weapon because he's not legal yet, you know? So the dad purchased it at Black Friday, has it in the house for this kid, this shooter. This weapon was stored in the parents' bedroom in a drawer that was completely unlocked.
Are we surprised by this with these people?
No, and additionally, something that's interesting is in Michigan, there's no legal requirement to store your weapon safely.
That's scary.
That is scary. So we all have a pit that it was stored in the parents' bedroom unlocked, but apparently that's not illegal. So the day before the shooting, a teacher at this high school saw the murderer shopping for ammo on the computers. And she saw the shooter drawing a semi-automatic handgun.
No.
Pointing to the words, "The thoughts won't stop, help me." And a drawing of a bullet with, quote, "blood everywhere" written above it. So the teacher reported it, and the principal sat down with the parents and was like, "This is, a little crazy. Like, we can't be doing this. Like,
it's concerning.
Like, is anything the matter? Like, does he have access to anything? What anyone would do in that situation." Well, the parents never, ever, ever said, "Oh, well, we have a weapon that we just gave to him, completely unlocked." Like, they never said anything. They were like, "Okay, cool." Then the mother texted the murderer after this meeting with the principal and goes, quote, "LOL, I'm not mad at you. You have to learn not to get caught."
No.
Yeah.
Wow.
When the parents met at the school with the principal or whatever, they were shown the images and the drawings depicting, like, shooting victims and all the things that the teacher saw. I haven't read anything about this. I wasn't privy to any of this. This is so shocking. Yeah. So that whole time, they never, ever, 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 it never raised, they never said anything about that the kid could have access to it. And in fact, they just kind of said, "Just don't get caught," So
What is the time frame between the principal sitting down with the parents and the shooting?
the next day.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said the text message was... I'm sorry. I thought the text messages were happening, like, were continuing to happen after the principal meeting, and there was, like, a week or something in between.
No. Like, after the meeting. Yeah.
Wow.
The district attorney decided to charge the parents because, this is just kind of egregious. And the district attorney says, listen, these parents knew that this kid had this murderer had these intents, the ability, and, arguably a plan, depending on however you see those drawings. And, you didn't do anything. You didn't disclose the gun. You didn't go check afterwards and see if the weapon was still in the drawer, or go home and see where it was, or go home and lock it, or anything after this meeting. And in fact, nobody even said anything else, like, about checking for the weapon until right after the public was notified that there was the active shooter. Then the dad drove home to look for that specific weapon.
And obviously wasn't there.
Saw it was missing, called 911, and was like, I think my kid's the shooter. Yeah. So that's why the DA decided to charge the parents, because it's like, okay,
rightfully so.
This is incredibly egregious and aiding and,
Well, and did they go on the run as well?
Okay, so they were scheduled to attend their arraignment on Friday, but they failed to show up. And their lawyer informed officials that they actually left town that night for their own safety. Okay, so fuck you. If only some of those kids, or all of them, could have been so lucky to run to safety, like, fuck you.
This is so depressing, and this is so upsetting, and
I know, so not light. But anyway, the parents were at large until last night, when they were finally apprehended. They were hiding in a building in Detroit, so they pled not guilty.
Well, an entire family. I hope that this kid is the only child of this family.
Oh yeah, I'm not sure.
They all rot in prison. They all rot in hell. And the first thing I immediately thought of was Brittany from Vanderpump Rules saying, "Rot in hell."
Rot in hell. Yeah, seriously.
These poor it was so preventable. And these poor families of the kids that lost their lives. It's so sad.
Ugh.
And justice for those families. And
every kid who was there, and every family of every kid who was there how do you go back to school?
I hope that they don't give these people, or any of them, a plea deal. And I hope they go to trial and they're all convicted of life in prison without parole, or even the death penalty.
Yeah, it's really
And
bad.
I know that's I know that's an unpopular opinion, but I think it exists for cases like this.
That's your opinion.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, so that's my super upsetting one.
Well, let's end on kind of a more lighthearted one, I guess. This could be our last one.
Okay.
Because although it is an intense topic, there's some justice being served here. Okay, so CNN suspends anchor Chris Cuomo indefinitely due to his involvement in the defense of his brother's allegations that he is facing. And so before I don't know if you're aware of this, but before this story dropped, there were some whispers among CNN and other news organizations that Chris Cuomo had in fact been helping out Andrew Cuomo with the defense of these allegations and trying to get information about the victims and other news outlets that were going to drop stories, basically. And I guess CNN was made aware of it, and they gave him a second chance, and they're like, please don't engage in this anymore.
What the hell? Okay.
They didn't think it was as bad as it was.
Oh.
And so, because Chris Cuomo had given a statement on August 16th that said, "I'm not an advisor, I'm a brother." And he then went on to tell viewers that in his, I never attacked nor encouraged anyone to attack any woman who came forward. I never made calls to the press about my brother's situation. And now we have come to find out, obviously, as in the last couple of weeks, that this is completely false. And that statement was a complete lie because the Attorney General's Office of New York had come out and dropped thousands of pages of evidence of Chris Cuomo's involvement, and that it was more than what was previously known by CNN and the general public. And so, and the reason why this is a big deal is because it's a breach of any traditional, really the traditional
journalistic integrity.
And so CNN came out and issued a statement that said the documents, which we were not privy to before the public release, raised serious questions. And when Chris admitted to us that he had offered advice to his brother's staff, he broke our rules, and we acknowledged that publicly. But we also appreciated the unique position he was in and understood he needs to put family at first and job second. However, these documents pointed to a greater level of involvement in his brother's efforts than we previously knew. And as a result, Chris Cuomo has been suspended indefinitely pending a further evaluation. And so really what he was doing is Chris Cuomo was going around and assisting Andrew Cuomo's staff with his defense. And he was making efforts to track down the status of pending articles, was reaching out to news organizations, was finding out what other allegations were going to be coming out and finding information on the women that were coming forward.
Yeah, that's not cool. Well, I know how to solve this. First of all, get rid of them, both of them. Goodbye, kick them out. And with his time slot, I say we give it to Turtleneck Girl, the White House correspondent, Caitlin. I love her.
Oh, yeah.
Give her the thing. Let's give her the hour. She deserves it, and she's done nothing wrong. Only great things.
Yeah.
Wow.
Bye-bye, Chrissy. Bye-bye, Andrew.
Bye.
It's some level of justice. And you know what? The Cuomo family's had a rough year.
Have they?
And
it seems like they walked right into it.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying that, you know, things haven't been going as great because, you know, Mr. Andrew Cuomo went from being the sexiest man alive to then being nominated.
Nipple piercings.
Then people loving his nipple piercings, him being nominated for an Emmy, and I think winning an Emmy, and then just like a really, really significant downfall.
Well, bon voyage, sirs.
Yeah, so some justice, right?
Yeah. I guess so. Vote for Caitlin, and then it'll be justice. Okay, do you have any criminal behavior?
You go first.
Okay, so I have two, but I'm going to start with, I'm going to actually put two people, I'm going to just like call them criminals, but together. So they're doing joint criminal activity. And that's Teddy and Tamra. Have you heard?
I saw two judgy girls posted it on their Instagram.
They're starting a podcast together. And I cannot imagine how this came to be. I can't. How do they know each other?
I don't know. And the name of it is appalling. The logo is appalling. It's so bad. It is so bad.
Oh my God. You know, it's so on brand though.
It's disgusting.
Ugh. So yeah, those are my criminal behaviors for them. Gross. Don't do that to us.
Well, my criminal behavior is non-Bravo related.
Ooh.
But as I went on a work trip, you know, I had to travel during the work week. But I still had billable hours and things that I needed to get done. So I was really dependent on Wi-Fi, you know, at the airport, at the hotel. And I don't understand how we live in the 21st century and there's still shitty Wi-Fi. Yeah. I did not have Wi-Fi at the hotel. I only had 2 bars and I was staying in like an industrial park area where it was business hotels everywhere. And then on top of that, I was at the airport, still no Wi-Fi, couldn't get anything done. And I was just actually appalled at the fact that we don't have strong Wi-Fi everywhere.
I can't believe that we don't have Wi-Fi as like a public utility, you know, like street lights.
Yes,
I don't
absolutely.
get
offensive, shocking, offensive criminal should be in jail. Should be in jail with all of the Jussies, the Cuomos, I don't even know what their names are, the Oxford parents. I don't even want to utter their names. People. The Duggars.
Yeah. Gross boy.
The Ghislaines, even though we didn't get to Ghislaine.
Yeah. Probably next week we'll have more to say about her. Okay, so we'll wrap it up. Shout out to our VIP patrons, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, CK, Classic Skytops, and Wendy Beth.
Yes.
Don't forget, if you want to listen ad-free, we know ads are annoying, but, it's kind of expensive to hold a podcast for free. So we need the money for the ads. So if you want to listen ad-free, $3 a month on Patreon. We have different tiers, $1, $10, $5, $20, $1 million. Follow us on Instagram at AllegedlyBravo. Same with Twitter and our website, allegedlybravo.com. Do you want to tell them what we're doing next week?
You guys were talking about Mr. Mohamed Hadid.
I cannot wait. I have so much to say.
I have a lot to say too, and there have been some really recent developments, like in the last month, as to one of the cases, and so we are going to do a deep dive into that, and I promise you don't want to miss it.
No, you don't. So see you next week. Bye.
Bye.